Ready?
Get started.
When you make a cylinder, remember guys, and happens to a lot of people, when it's down here farther, and for this, remember you're going to make a dome that's kind of narrow and tall instead of wide and flat. Remember that idea of doing the top third first, then the middle third? Okay, really do that. You have to consciously think about that and don't forget. Okay, because it's really important to keep a cylinder in good shape. Also, I noticed when I was out here with my outside hand to keep that cylinder in really good shape, I'm not just digging my elbow in like this, I'm using my upper body to squish that arm back in here and keeping my wrists and fingertips really stiff here, so as I come up, I do not allow the clay to get out of whack. Okay, if it does get out of whack a little bit, we can trim off the rim because it works its way up to the rim. So really lean on this arm so that it doesn't get out of round. Now, at this point, you want to clean up any water, and you want to make sure your cylinder's in pretty good shape. Keep it as narrow as you can. Also, as you come up, as soon as you can, use this thumb against the rim so you don't just a little pressure so this does not accidentally flare out, because you need to make it even narrower, and we'll get there. Now there's a new tool you can use. This is called a throwing stick. As you can see, that one has a little chunk taken out of it. There's a round little part like here, like a spoon. What we do with this, we can use it. You don't always have to use this, and I don't use it much, but we're gonna start getting a little bit of a round belly down here about the bottom half, and then we'll start working the top and do them kind of simultaneously. Okay, again, you should have a little bit of moisture down inside there, and we're gonna use this round part in the place of your fingers. And this happens especially when the top gets a little, I'll talk about this in a second. If the top gets a little bit too narrow and you don't want to put your hand down in there, you can use this, hold it with your right hand, and your left hand's going to apply the pressure. And as you come up, you're going to come out a little bit and then back in. Think of kind of a ball shape down here. So, and again, elbows tight. Make sure this doesn't move around on you. So I start at the bottom. Whoops, I've got this in wrong. This is the wrong. Oh, it's rounded on the wrong side. That's for you. This is the opposite one. There we go. Oh. I've never seen one done like that. We have a new one or two around. So that round curve needs to go along with the round curve on the inside of your pot. Okay, otherwise it was jabbing into it wrong. All right, so I'm going to push out as I come up, then come back in when I get about halfway. Did that do anything? It's doing a little bit. You can also go down with this. So I'm going to push out slightly, and then let it come back in toward the floor of the inside. Now this bottom half doesn't want to come out very far. People will go way out here, but look how narrow the neck is going to be. So that's about as far as I want to go. You'll see the neck get narrow. Now we're going to collar. There's a pattern of collaring and pulling. Collaring is like taking two hands and like choking, putting your hands around the clay. And the inside part of your hand right here is the pressure point. And what we want to do is gently and slowly come up. The clay needs to be dry. You can see it's really out of whack, and if I let go too fast, that's going to happen. So come off the clay slowly. This down here needs to be a nice subtle S curve. If you make the ball, if you make the curve right here too abrupt, it's going to collapse. Okay, so you really have to think that nice architectural kind of S curve. So, hands wet. I'm going to push in and come up. Now, here's my pattern that I use. I collar twice and then pull. Because when you collar the clay, it gets thicker. And it tends to fold up on itself, like material folds up on itself when you squish it together. So then you can't get in there all the way, so we're just gonna pinch slightly and pull to even out the clay. I'm not trying to really make it taller, I'm just evening out the clay. Sometimes you'll feel little ripples when you pinch and pull it. So we need to make sure it's wet, make sure your hands are wet, and we're gonna just collar in the top half. Doing this, you can also literally close up the top of a piece of pottery if you wanted to, but we're gonna keep it open to get that bottleneck. See, under my fingers, I can feel the little ripple of the clay. Okay, and there's gonna be a little magic move here in a minute. Take your time. Let's use our little taco shell on the rim. Now we're gonna collar again. Make sure things are wet and slippery. And these fingers down here are feeling this round curve right here. And this one is plenty big. This is quite a bit bigger than you guys will have to make yours. But if you want to go for this, fine. All right, another collar, and it just takes some time. This rim that's getting a little bit off, we can slice that off like normal. Now we have a little secret move. If you just pinch and pull over here where you normally do, it might torque the clay, twist the clay, and really get it off. You need to use your middle finger on the opposite side. It'd be like squeezing it from both sides, but now you're gonna pinch the clay. This finger right here must make equal pressure on that side. So I'm pressing with that finger too, and I'm pinching and pulling just like normal. Slowly, slowly. So if you don't apply pressure here, this is really gonna start to get off and wonky. All right, now, later, when I trim this, I'm gonna be able to make this a little bit rounder. So, and you can add little decorative marks if you want to also. Now, right here, the transition is where a lot of students will press too hard and not have that nice S curve. All right, this is getting to be about long enough. And remember, we're going for roughly half belly and half neck, and that's certainly close enough. See out here, it doesn't matter if there's little finger marks, we're gonna trim that. Okay, as long as it's not going too wonky out here, you're fine. Okay, now, I would like to, this is kind of off up here, right? That's gonna be normal. When you take this off, make sure you're applying pressure over here also, for the same reason. You don't want to stress the clay out. You can even see, let me do this first. Okay, you can kind of see a spiral. Part of that is just from my finger marks, and part of it is this clay up here has really gone through a lot of stress. It went out and back in, and really pushing on it from the outside, and it will just naturally kind of twirl, kind of have that turn. Right now we're going to work on the lip, the rim. I'm going to use my little taco shell. Now, there are two ways you can do this. I can just pinch and pull, but when you do so, you have to, kind of like before, you have to use the opposite finger going in the opposite direction. So I'm going to pinch and pull this out a little bit. As soon as I can, look at this finger, it's going to get in there, and you're going to push it out from both sides at the same time. And you get in there and kind of clean things out a little bit with your sponge. That's not enough of a flare. I want a little bit more. But again, if you only do it from this side, it's liable to just kind of let the whole neck kind of bend. And I'm gonna make my neck a little taller by collaring down there a little bit more. Okay, there's a little extra clay right there. Okay, now again, I'm gonna let's get some water. I'm going to push, my middle finger is pushing out at the same time as my index finger is pushing out, just in both directions. Now there's another way to kind of think about this, and people have done this way. You can make your 2 index fingers into a V and just kind of put your fingers in there a little bit and then open up that V shape, and you can see it's kind of the same thing, just in a different way. All right, now finish off the top. Again, this little S curve right in here is important. All right, just doing some cleanup with my sponge. Now, okay, that's all right. Now we're going to take off some clay down here, just like we always do. And down here, we're going to trim more down here too. It's going to be more round on the bottom when you trim, but that's not today. So let's cut off a little bit down here like we always do. Undercut it. But some of you might be thinking, there's a whole bunch of water down in the bottom. How are you going to get it out? Because just like any other pot, you don't want the water to sit down there, because it'll turn that clay at the bottom of your pot to mush. All right? So this is another thing that you probably have never done before. I'm just going to kind of clean off the bat, and I'm going to move to the sink, and I'll show you the inside of this as well. At the top, sometimes there's a little bit of just clay gunk in there. You can get that out later after it is firm. After it's actually, let me do this really fast. I'm just going to kind of take my little finger and seal it, so no air wants to get underneath there, because I'm not going to be able to trim it till Monday. Just kind of sealed it right down there. Now, let's get the water out of the inside. So you have to come to the sink, and you have to put your thumbs under your bat, and on a count of 3, you have to have this kind of arcing motion with your hands, and you just do that and let any water come out, and it will not fall off unless you undercut it with a wire. Now, some of you are very afraid to do this, but it's okay. And then opposite, kind of do that so you don't wind up, bending the clay. It's Friday today, so make sure to cover it. Make sure your bag kind of touches here if you made one of these today. And if I was coming back the next day, I'd still put a bag over it, but don't let it quite hit the bat, so some air can get in and out. Cool.